Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we are going to talk about the nodal axis changing signs. The north node will be moving into Aquarius and the south node will be moving into Leo. Now, these points, they change signs about every 18 months or so, and they are the eclipsing points. So whenever we get a new moon or a full moon that's within about 19 degrees of the north node or the south node, that's going to be an eclipse, a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. These are very potent areas of the sky. They represent quite far-reaching change, consequences, and the general direction of society in a given period of time. So the nodal axis will be in Aquarius and Leo from about July of 2026 to about March of 2028. And as I mentioned, since these are the eclipse points, we will get a series of eclipses clustering around Aquarius season or about February of each year and Leo season or about August of each year that are going to bring their own flavor to how this all winds up unfolding. We'll cover each of those in turn, but here I want to give an overview of where and how we're likely to see the major shifts in the coming couple of years. Often with the nodal axis where it is, especially by house in our own chart, so that's where the timestamps for the horoscopes are going to come into play for us. Those houses that are getting transited are going to feature further reaching changes than you would usually expect in those areas of life. So having that preview, having that understanding of what's coming up, what's going to be shifting, I think can be incredibly helpful looking at where the nodal axis is transiting. Additionally, this time around, we have planets that are going to be interacting with the nodal axis in a pretty significant way. So as you can see, we have a couple of conjunctions that are coming up in aspect to the north node and the south node. In the middle of November of 2026, so in several months here, we're going to have a triple conjunction of Mars and Jupiter and the south node in Leo around 25 degrees. And then in the following November, mid-November of 2027, we will have the north node conjoin Pluto in Aquarius. So this is massively increasing the impact of these changes. This is going to further introduce themes of power, wealth, growth, and evolution, even conflict. So it raises the temperature on all of this. So we'll look at this on a general level here, and then we're going to take this and look at it from the north node perspective, the north node in Aquarius, and then we'll look at it from the south node perspective. We'll look at both of these aspects and what those are likely to introduce to the equation. And when we get into the north node conjunct to Pluto, I'm going to go into a little bit of the history of the north node and Pluto in Aquarius together and how that's informing what we're likely to see from this transit. So it's important to understand with the nodal axis, the north node tends to be what we should reach for, we should strive for in order to experience a greater sense of growth in our lives. To me, I look at it as the direction which we're encouraged to grow. Whereas the south node, it's not that we should completely ignore or just sweep aside what the south node is pointing to, in this case, Leo, but we can have a tendency to over-rely on this area. It can feel somewhat natural to fall into this as a comfort zone. So that's some of what we're going to be seeing here, is that there is going to be this encouragement and a lot of growth is going to develop along these Aquarian lines of the social, society, institutions, intelligence, technology, strategic thinking, rather than necessarily just personal or emotional thinking. This is likely to be a very innovative period of time, also quite rebellious. So we could see some interesting kinds of disruptions coming up, disruptions to the status quo. This is also likely to be a period of time which is quite collectivist and progressive. There's a lot of rallying around causes that we see when the north node is in Aquarius. The last time that the north node was in Aquarius, for instance, was around 2007, 2008. And so rather than centralizing power, rather than just uplifting individuals, that's where the collectivism winds up coming in. There tends to be a major focus on how do we innovate socially so that we're able to serve the needs of more people. So getting further into that, with the north node in Aquarius, We're likely to benefit quite a lot from leaning into especially the best aspects of Aquarius, but really a lot of different Aquarian traits and attitudes and characteristics and archetypes of that sign. So this is a very intellectual, very intelligent sign. It places a huge amount of value on rationality, on being able to explain why you believe what you believe, why your strategy is what it is. It values efficiency, clean arguments, solutions orientation. So it doesn't really like to get bogged down in emotional thinking. So over the coming years, certainly people who carry a lot of intelligence, who are able to wear that on their sleeve, should be benefiting quite a bit, as well as people who are quite articulate and able to get their ideas across. This is also going to favor social connections, collaboration, group projects, community projects, working together towards similar articulable ends. So what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What is it that we're trying to innovate around? Being really clear on that, and then everyone playing their part in that. Now, on a personal level, this is going to be great for group projects, teamwork, leadership along those lines. So if you are able to keep a lot of different people on the same page, that's going to go over very well. It's going to be highly valued in the coming couple of years. Networking and connectivity is also going to be strongly favored, really for the same reason. How do we get everything clicking along in the same direction in an efficient manner? So the ability to understand and relate to others and understand how people are able to relate to each other, that's all going to be very favored. Like I said, solutions orientation, but also genuine expertise. So Aquarius isn't just about who's able to shine the best or who is able to make it seem like they know the most. It's more along the lines of who is genuinely the best fit for any given role. And when it comes to experts, I think we're going to see a lot of people emerging as leaders in their field. This should be quite supportive of entrepreneurism as well. So for instance, if there are any institutions that are stuck and unwilling to innovate, this is also going to help a lot with people striking out on their own, being willing to go their own way, specifically when they feel that that's what's going to offer the best results. Additionally, I think that people overall are going to be inclined to want to learn more than to just be entertained. The question of what are you genuinely getting out of any given experience is likely to come up quite strongly. So maybe rather than like doom scrolling, this is going to be trying to spend that time learning something valuable, something that's going to contribute to your understanding of yourself or the world or whatever it is that you're interested in. So we could find that there's a lot of people who are building up their own expertise. Now, they may not become like field leaders, but in this period of time, we are likely to see a lot of people take on board very valuable information and then be able to apply that together, especially toward community ends or toward collaborations, toward entrepreneurship. Additionally, like I said, Aquarius is going to help us to go our own way as needed. So it is going to encourage recognizing our uniqueness, recognizing the significance of being authentic, not just trying to fit into a box, not just trying to meet the social expectations of others. But I think there's going to be such a fascinating interplay between the South Node in Leo and the North Node in Aquarius, where it's not just that people are going to be taking up space, but that people will stand out for their ability to contribute collectively. And I think one of the biggest contributions that people are going to take quite a bit of pride in is the ability to inspire other people to find their role, to find their place, to make their mark as well. Now, as you can see, I'm trying to stay on the individual level, but it's very hard when we are dealing with Aquarius. So I have down here a lot of what we're likely to see more on a global or a social level, and this is going to have a huge impact along those lines. I've looked back over the past 6 different times that we've had the North Node in Aquarius, and just going back, we've seen 2007, 1989, 1970, 1952, 1933, 1914. So we do see rallying around social causes for better and worse. Generally speaking, across these years, there have been some pretty strong progressive pushes, like collectivist pushes. A lot of arguments made around the impact of the social order on regular people. Of course, in a few of these years, those certainly haven't been left to their own devices. There have also been some quite regressive social movements that have received some rallying. But even though it's a mixed bag, there have always been these strong humanitarian pushes, these strong collectivist pushes. So certainly we're going to see a lot of embracing, a lot of growth around collectivism, around this notion of we, of grassroots collective action, community collaboration. So taking care of each other. If the institutions aren't going to fill in those spaces, then people on a community level being very willing to take care of each other and make sure that the social needs are met around us. So the social involvement is likely to increase quite a bit. There's going to be a lot of discussion around notions of equality, rights, society, progress, people power, especially. Social causes are going to stir a lot of people up in different directions. We're likely to see a major increase in online communities as well, and this notion of a desire to find one's tribe, a desire to find one's people. I think there's going to be a major renewal and innovation along the lines of ideas and ideologies as well. So not just working with what we already have along those lines, but finding new ways to work together, new ways even to organize ourselves politically. Now, when it comes to the networks, connectivity, technologies, we are also likely to see a huge amount of innovation along all of those lines. Issues of surveillance are likely to come up, big tech, AI, automation, and how this all winds up intersecting with notions of governance or voting or participation socially. It's also likely to play into this quite a bit. Like how with all of these technological innovations are we going to restructure society? How are we going to restructure our institutions around all of this new technology? These are going to be major aspects of our conversation going forward. I think there's going to be a huge amount of discussion of consciousness and kind of across the board when it comes to that. So social consciousness, the social conscience, and how we treat each other. What is consciousness, of course, when it comes to these issues of AI and all of this? What is intelligence? Now, some of this could become a bit overly detached. And that's one thing that I'm going to throw out here of we may want to keep our eye on how emotionally detached we're getting. One of the best qualities of Leo, and with the South Node moving through Leo, I would really encourage drawing those lines between what's stereotypically really lovely about the archetype of Leo and what can get kind of complicated or go overboard. But one of the best aspects of that is warmth and the ability to emanate warmth to others. So if we're able to manage the intellect of Aquarius with the warmth of Leo, I think we're going to be doing really well over the coming couple of years. I do worry about martialization, war, and conflict, power and coercion. So like the kind of insidious kinds of conflict that can come up as well. Power, how that's utilized, marginalization, etc. Now, this is all probably overall going to push us in an excellent direction when it comes to that ultimately, but it can be really bumpy and it could get somewhat violent with the North Node up there with Pluto. Finally, one of the hugest things that I think is incredibly fascinating with the North Node in Aquarius that comes up again and again, but especially with the co-presence of Pluto, which, by the way, the last time that we had these two together in Aquarius was in the mid-1780s. But what we wind up getting is these new notions of legitimate authority and institutions, new institutions of governance, new notions of democracy, and how do we organize around democratic will? What's allowed to be believed and what's not allowed to be believed? What is a legitimate, authorized utilization of the institutions of power and control and governance that we have in our society and what's not? So this is going to be a huge conversation going forward. Again, likely to be very bumpy along all of those lines, but we do wind up clarifying a lot, historically speaking. So this is a lot of what we're encouraged to embrace, that we're encouraged to work with over the coming couple of years. And one thing I would say is most important with all of this, especially with, we of course have Uranus also moving through Gemini over these years. Utilize your voice, speak up, make your ideas known, contribute your ideas socially. It doesn't have to be on this huge level. We don't all have to run for office, but speaking up and just clarifying where you stand on things, I think is going to help others, again, with that uniqueness and authenticity, able to inspire others to not lose any sort of ground on freedom of speech or on what are acceptable ideas, on democracy, essentially. Just willing to speak up about what you care about, I think can be incredibly inspiring to other people and can make others feel safe and like their ideas are legitimate as well. So let's talk about the South Node in Leo. This is where a lot of the consequences can wind up coming through in a pretty intense way. The South Node is something we have a tendency to over rely upon. And when we're dealing with fire signs, they can go especially overboard. And we also have, this is a terrible example actually, because this is the eclipse that's going to happen just after Jupiter moves into Virgo. I should have thought about that. But Jupiter's going to be in Leo for the better part of this South Node in Leo period of time. And Jupiter itself can also point to where we go overboard. So Leo itself can do so. The South Node can go overboard. So can Jupiter. So we're likely to see that a lot. And we're likely to see that from people who tend to lean in heavily to the aspects of Leo or the parts of the Leo archetype that requires karmic correction or consequential correction to our behavior. So, of course, we tend to see that coming through as ego or coming through as highly personalizing or centering the self. And what we're likely to see then from that, because we're dealing with the South Node, it can bring high things low. For sure. So we're likely to see this kind of diminishment of ego, diminishment or outing of cults of personality or illegitimate hierarchies. Now, this is likely in the coming couple of years to remain something of a crutch, but it's likely to become less and less stable as the South Node moves through Leo. So the unhealthy dynamics of ego and of centering the self, this is likely to be something that we understand on a deeper level through our collective experience with that and with people who tend to do that over the coming couple of years. We're likely to see a lot of crises of centralized power. Leo tends to represent centralized power. Aquarius tends to represent decentralized power. Now, this is going to get a little complex with the North Node up in Aquarius with Pluto, but overall, this is going to be shaky ground. When it comes to people who base all of their legitimacy or their authority on just their ability to center themselves or their ability to serve themselves, that is going to run straight into some pretty huge issues. So you don't want to be on that boat when that happens. We are likely to see attempts to continue to center vanity projects or kind of a hollow influencer culture. We may see something of a rise and then fall of like the beauty industry, of Hollywood and celebrity culture, of drama. So drama will ultimately become a hindrance here, but we may see it hit a fever pitch before that happens. High conflict personalities are likely to suffer some really big consequences under this influence, but it's going to take a little time. The nodal axis does generally unfold in layers, and it also tends to get spurred on by the eclipses. So yeah, overall, diminishment of grandiosity falls from grace. There is a real need to set aside our kind of over-identification with ourself. So like I said, not just the consciousness of Aquarius, but also the conscientiousness of Aquarius, I think is going to be very important. We need to take other people into consideration over the coming couple of years if we don't want to have ourselves corrected by the nodal axis here. Now, what's helpful about that is that this can wind up encouraging a renewal of a healthier notion of self, or again, of contribution. It's not just about me, and what I want. It's more about who am I and what am I able to offer? What do I give to society? That is something to take pride in. But when we lose focus of the service orientation of that, that's where we can start to get into some trouble with the South Node in Leo. We are likely in the coming couple of years to see issues of sovereignty come up quite a bit. I've been kind of harping on this for a little while because of the fact that we have Saturn and Neptune in Aries. We're going to have the South Node in Leo. And as I mentioned, Jupiter is in Leo for the better part of 2026 and 2027. So that is likely to be an issue. We'll probably see that on a personal level of what is this institution to tell me what I am and am not allowed to do. We may also see that on a national level of bristling at the idea of being told what to do by outside forces. So some of this is going to look like nationalism in various different forms. But what's interesting about the interplay of Aquarius and Leo is that notions of rights get very interesting. We have the collective rights of Aquarius, but we also have then the individual rights of Leo. Now, sometimes we get into problems of individual rights where some people take that too far into negative rights kind of a territory where people can act like, I have the right to do this harm to other people. That's where this becomes a problem. And especially if we're relying on notions of personal identity. or I'm special because XYZ, so I get special treatment, or I have special rules for me. We see this often on a class basis, certainly. This notion of the rules don't apply to me, that's going to be a problem here. So ultimately, what we're likely to see here is this renegotiation of our identities, of our boundaries as well, where we end and others begin. So like I've said a couple times here, the cults of personality are going to become an issue, where people have centered their sense of self around the identity of someone else or something outside of them that is apart from them. That's going to become really fractured, and it could turn into this overwhelming sense of grievance. So we are likely to see a lot of drama around those kinds of issues, a lot of theatrics around this, a lot of saviorism around all of this. I would be very cautious of people who tend to center themselves, basically. Overall, that's going to wind up crashing and burning with the South Node in Leo. But again, what's interesting is it almost looks like with Jupiter there that a lot of people are going to get set up for traps along those lines. And we're about to talk about the triple conjunction of Mars and Jupiter and the South Node in Leo. That looks crazy to me along these lines. Now, again, when these central figures fall apart here, it is likely that we're going to get into a lot of victimhood complexes, blaming others, ego deaths, things like that. Those who have bought into cult of personality, holding people up like, again, the saviorism or exalting specific individuals. Those who have bought in are going to be shown their errors, and we'll see how that winds up playing out for different kinds of personalities, whether they're able to embrace the lessons of that or not. So speaking about this moment in mid-November of 2026 is likely when that is going to be screaming loud. So what we have here is Mars and Jupiter and the South Node all conjunct at 25 degrees of Leo. This is, geopolitically speaking, a pretty significant point right now. A lot of different nations around the world, the charts that I've seen, a lot of them have Leo rising. So on a national level, this is going to be very relevant for a lot of different countries. This is extremely relevant for Donald Trump, who has his Mars right there, as well as his ascendant. We also see there the Mars of Israel, the Mars of Benjamin Netanyahu. So here's basically what we're dealing with when we have this triple conjunction. Let's remove the South Node there for a moment to look at what is Mars and Jupiter conjunct in Leo. That is a huge amount of courage. It is a strong willingness to take action and to take risks, to be extremely daring, to be willing to go way, way, way out on a limb around any sort of a belief, can be really overconfident. And especially in Leo, it kind of would be. And because it's going so overboard, it could, at its worst, also lean into very egoic actions as well. Anger, overreach. Now, usually a Mars-Jupiter conjunction can get away with a lot because of the fact that Jupiter's there. So where Mars may stir up Jupiter to go way overboard, it's still able to rely on that Jupiter to clean up any sort of accidental messes that may be created in the risk-taking process. With the South Node there, what we have is basically the strongest point of major consequences for our actions. So this is why I'm saying it looks like there's a trap that's being set up here, cosmically speaking, for people to stumble into when they go overboard and when they are overconfident and when they are high conflict or highly dramatic, or they take risks that impact other people, or they're too conflictual or too competitive. So we're going to see that kind of across the board. This is one thing that I've been warning people about when I've seen this impacting parts of their chart, especially if you have a placement around 25 degrees. Around mid-November, let's say give or take a couple days from the 15th, I would really caution around being really overconfident in your actions, because it's much more likely that you're going to see some major corrective consequences. So on the positive side of this, if we do struggle with confidence, this is going to bring that up. Keep in mind, it's going to be brought up to a fever pitch, so we may not want to take all of that on, but it can clarify what that would look like, what that would feel like to us if it's something of an unfamiliar feeling. Everyone's going to be feeling more confident than usual here, including those that don't need it. But this can be really wonderful for instance, leaning into the wonderful aspect of Leo, which is encouraging others, trying to shine that light, trying to bring a sense of warmth and affirmation to other people. So being willing to speak up and say, hey, you're doing great, or I love this that you're doing. Trying to share the warmth of that Leo with other people. We are likely to feel like there's extra energy, that there's extra excitement, that there's extra enthusiasm in the air as well. It's going to be important that we try and channel that as constructively as possible. There are pitfalls abound with this, so trying to find those healthy outlets is going to be really great. Also, anything that we're doing when we're very much staying in our own lane. So if you want to write, if you want to create, this is a highly creative energy. This could be wonderful for releasing inhibitions when it comes to any sort of a creative process and just being willing to like put it all out there. And we don't necessarily need to publish everything in this moment, but we could grab onto this energy for the sake of that. We could also utilize this for purging, actively utilizing that south node on the overboard nature of Mars and Jupiter and Leo. So where there is conflict or drama or over competition in our lives, being able to release that, that's in the ether. That's something that we can really grab onto during this time. So I would really encourage that. If you've been wanting to intentionally leave some drama behind, let things go, especially things that get you worked up. If you believe in setting intentions, this could be a really fascinating time to do that. This is a very powerful purge. It can even help you to clear the air, to clear the path, to move forward in a new way. But best if we can avoid any sort of jealousy or comparison to others, things like that, taking that with us. On a social level, oh boy, is this likely to be a fascinating, very weird time. Now, there could be conflict, could be literally war that comes through here. There could be crackdowns or violence around centralized power that feels like its grip or its grasp is slipping. We could see some tyrannical behavior due to that. I don't love that this looks like it's pretty close to the US election. That said, it looks like a trap to me. So that's why I have this written here, not just violence and over consequences for this. So if this has been done in the past, we could see some consequences for it. This is one of the things that's fascinating about the nodal axis, is that it can wind up seeming to fold the past into the present moment, as well as folding the future into the present moment. So we can deal directly with consequences for things that we feel like we're done with. They could wind up cropping up again. But we can also wind up sowing seeds when we're dealing, for one thing, with conjunctions, generally speaking, but especially when we're dealing with the nodal axis. This is a seeding moment. So how we're acting during this moment is going to be incredibly important. So if people are falling into this trap, it's going to be a deep trap. So consequences for that overreach, for war, for overconfidence, for tyranny, but also for anger and acting in anger, for jealousy and envy, for being conflictual, for trying to undermine others rather than building them up. This is likely to create those falls from on high, those falls from grace. What's interesting too is that Aquarius is so institutional that we may actually see like judgments come down over these things. So people could be sowing some legal seeds for themselves as well. Maybe there's a checks and balances kind of thing that's coming into this as well. We may even see some purging of militaries or other martial or hypermasculine figures or institutions during this period of time. I'm hoping that there's not some kind of a large number of loss of life. That could also be the case here. What I'm hoping for a little bit more is that this Mars and Jupiter are going to be hyping something up that winds up being pretty anticlimactic. I think we'll also see a little bit of that. And I think that'll be one of the more amusing sides of how this winds up playing out. Like high drama, low substance events and experiences. I also have a couple other figures here that I forgot to mention. Yes, this is on Trump's Mars. It's also on the Venus and the Ascendant of J.D. Vance. It's on the North Node of Pete Hegseth as well. So that combined with the connection to Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu, hopefully this is not some kind of conflagration or renewal of war that we see here, but I wouldn't be surprised by that. However, again, it's unlikely that that's just going to be something that is gotten away with. So yeah, this is an insanely loud moment. I would really preach some caution in our own individual actions during that time. And now on the other side of that, the nodal axis, I don't think I mentioned this, but the nodal axis, it moves backwards. It's always retrograde. So after that, by about a year, it will catch up with Pluto earlier in these signs. So in mid-November then of 2027, we get that conjunction with Pluto. Now, this is going to be fascinating. I think on a personal level, we'll see some psychological breakthroughs, some deeper understanding of ourselves and our lives, of our power, of how we can strengthen ourselves, how we can channel our willpower. We may feel magnetically drawn in certain directions. The North Node, it tends to pull us in directions that we should be leaning in, but with Pluto there as well, it's likely to be even more impossible to resist the draw. And one of the things that this could magnetize us around is unhealthy dynamics. Now, hopefully there aren't many of us that still need to learn about that. Maybe some younger people who haven't had experiences along those lines will actually find this to be drawing them into something like that so that they can learn about it. I think for a lot of people, this is going to point to further detachment from unhealthy dynamics. Aquarius helps with that to a great extent. It can help to overcome the ego attachments, the sense of dependency that we can sometimes feel within unhealthy dynamics, the self-doubt and things like this. Aquarius is really excellent at finding a way. So if we want to get out of something, even if it feels difficult, it will find a way. We are likely to see an increase in power struggles here on an individual level, but also then on a level of people versus big tech. So this is one of the qualities of Pluto and Aquarius that's been quite fascinating, is that we have seen it both represent the quote unquote broligarchy or big tech, but we've also seen it play out as people power and collective organization and efforts. So we're likely to see that push and pull heightened quite a bit in this moment. There could be a reckoning around that. There could also be financial reckonings. I wouldn't be surprised to see some relationships where there are financial strings attached that are used to control, to see the financial standing there diminished. If people are misusing financial power, I think that this is going to course correct on that quite a bit. That said, we are likely to see these financial extremes, major shifts, major highs and lows. This is also when we're dealing with the nodal axis, we're dealing with consequences. And so with Pluto, there's this question around how are you using your power? Are you using it for good? Or are you abusing that power, including through violence, including through coercion or governance, lawfare, threats, intimidation, crackdowns, tyranny? With this as well, we're likely to see a lot of consequences along those lines. So there's some serious bumps here for people who are behaving in that way, especially people in power. When we're dealing with Pluto, we are dealing with finances, but we're dealing with like major institutions, corporate titans. And so we could see a reckoning when it comes to some of that, financial capital, etc. Also, again, the big tech companies that have been like centralizing. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a major challenge to that centralization under this influence, maybe through innovators, people who are doing better work or making more efficient products or solutions. I would also expect us to see some pretty fascinating discoveries come up through this time, and that could also wind up shaking up the tech industry as well. Now, with all of that said, I want to just give an overview. I don't want to go into like every different thing. There's an insane amount of stuff that was really significant that wound up playing out the last time that we had both Pluto and the North Node in Aquarius. As I mentioned, this was in the mid 1780s. And it's so incredibly on the nose because basically what this was, it was a period of time of like systematic societal blueprinting, trying to figure out how to design institutions to get the best social results out of that. This was also a period of time where different ideologies were being tested in the real world. So the actual institutionalization of Enlightenment ideals, where that was going to work, where that was going to fall short, where it was going to need to be corrected, etc. So a lot of intellectual boundary pushing. The strategic and systematic and institutional nature really came through during that period of time. A huge amount of notions of legal legitimacy, a legitimacy of authority. How was society going to be organized? How were all of the different institutions of government going to be organized going forward in like democratic republics? This was also when Immanuel Kant's What is Enlightenment was published, which called out millennia of historical power structures or societies for keeping the populations in a state of immaturity and ignorance, not letting them make choices for themselves. And so we may see that come up again. issues of democracy and what that means, and the need to rely on people to make decisions for themselves. So overall, this was a new world that was forming here, but it was very much under construction and very much being negotiated. And so that solutions orientation of Aquarius here, it really served these institutions well, looking for efficiencies, looking for what is going to work and what's not going to work, not just what am I attached to and what am I not, what benefits me and what doesn't. Now, of course, there was an endless amount of extreme hypocrisy during this period of time in the United States when it came to slavery. When it came to the position of women, there was a deep understanding that they were falling short on these issues, that those institutions, that those inequalities flew directly in the face of everything that they were calling for when it came to the American Revolution. And so we certainly can't just trust that things are going to come together the correct way. This does really require contributions across the board, hearing people out, trying to relate, trying to understand where people are coming from so that we're able to innovate in a way that's genuinely better for collectives, that's genuinely better for everyone involved. So no half measures, no hypocrisy, trying not to get too drowned out by our own sense of ego and what makes us feel special in some way. This is really not about that. And if we try not to deal with that now, we are going to have to deal with that down the road, which of course we wound up seeing unfold over the coming century after this point the last time. So yeah, definitely expect for society to become very political, to become very focused on how are we going to improve our standing and prevent some of the problems that we've seen arise recently from coming up again. How do we solve for that issue? Now, I don't expect that we're going to solve everything. We certainly did not last time, but we can definitely make improvements. On a personal level, the less that we can try to make ourselves fit into boxes, the less that we can focus on who it is that we, on an egoic level, want to be, and more on who we are and what contribution we can make and the improvements that we can make to ourselves that are natural for us, I think the better. And yeah, as I mentioned, this is going to be creating some level of upheaval in our own lives, especially where concerns the houses that this is going to be impacting. So feel free to check out the timestamps based on your rising sign or your sun sign, and we'll go more into that. If you enjoyed this video and you don't mind giving it a like or hype, I would really greatly appreciate that. Do consider sticking around by subscribing for future videos. We will shortly be starting to cover some of the eclipses that are going to be happening during this period of time as well. There's also information in the description box below and the pinned comment for personal bookings, as well as membership perks, including weekly forecasts, monthly courses, discounts on readings, free reading drawings every month. So check that out. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. And thank you so much to the members of this channel for your support. It really means the world to me, and much love to you. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have the North Node transiting Aquarius in your 11th house and the South Node transiting Leo in your 5th house. So this is going to have a lot to do with your sense of identity, expression, your social life, where you fit in, who you connect with, as well as your hopes, dreams, aspirations, pleasures, projects, things like this. So this is going to be something of an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years. There will be moments of like extra significant alignments that are going to be coming up. For instance, the eclipse seasons that this is going to be activated during, as well as a triple conjunction on the South Node in November of 2026. There's going to be a North Node Pluto conjunction in November of 2027 as well. But this is going to give you a preview of where in the coming couple of years you're likely to see the most significant change and reorientation. So you should find in the coming couple of years that there is a sense of building really significant social connections, group identity, working with others, collaborating with others, group projects. And you may feel that there are heightened social expectations placed upon you. So, for instance, you may find yourself in leadership roles. You may find yourself communicating with or connecting with larger groups of people. But where you fit in, where you belong, and how that can be of benefit to you as well as the group is going to be a major theme of how things are changing for you in the coming couple of years. So it's going to help quite a bit if you can focus on collaboration, on cooperation, rather than competing on an individual level. You're more likely to find personal growth in collaboration with others. And you may find that there are a lot of doors that wind up opening for you along those lines. Like I said, this is often going to be somewhere around your public life. So, career-wise, this could be leadership roles or in your community, even with your friends, your loved ones, being looked up to and being looked toward in order to lead the group itself. So don't be surprised if you find yourself placed in those roles in the coming couple of years. Additionally, the 11th house, this has to do with aspirations, hopes, optimism, your sense of your future, your vision of your future. And so this is also going to help to reorient you toward that. So really prioritizing and finding a sense of a wind at your back when it comes to your personal goals. Now, this may early on kind of bring you back to the drawing board with that, testing out some of those ideas, seeing what your priorities really are. Maybe there are some dreams that you have, some visions that you've had of your future that just don't seem to fit anymore. Maybe they even feel like, well, this was just some social pressure or some sense of what I was supposed to do rather than what I really wanted to do. And I've been pursuing it for a while, and I just don't really feel like it anymore. That would not surprise me. That would be like clearing out some space for major new personal goals that you're going to be pursuing. And specifically that wind at your back feeling. So you may find that, yes, you're prioritizing, yes, you're pursuing your goals, you're staying optimistic about your future, you're reaching, but also finding that there are just some really serendipitous, perfect breakthroughs that wind up happening as well. I would expect that most around the eclipse seasons, but honestly, the nodal axis can bring those things through even outside of the eclipse seasons, which, by the way, if you didn't listen to the general, that's going to be in Aquarius season and Leo season, so around February and August. And that's going to be through 2028. But yeah, so this is going to have you navigating notions of social expectations versus individuality. The South Node is a place that we can certainly emphasize, and it will be emphasized here, but we can over-rely on it a bit. And this is the place of individuality, of going it alone, of doing your own thing, of pursuing your own passion. So that's why I was saying it would be great if you could lean toward collaborations in this time, because that's where you're likely to see the most growth. However, that will be shaking up your personal life. If you have children, you may find that, let's say you have children and a specific career path that you're following, you may find that you need to navigate both of those aspects of your life together, shifting those priorities and balancing them out. That said, with the South Node going through your 5th house, this will help you to rediscover your sense of personal expression and joys, connecting with loved ones. That's going to feel somewhat more natural in these coming years. So if you've been feeling maybe over the past couple of years when the South Node was in your 6th house, because it moves, the nodal axis moves backwards, maybe you were working a lot. Maybe you were super focused on being responsible and the tasks and things that you needed to take care of, your responsibilities, basically. This would be pulling you back toward why. Why do you do what you do? What do you really enjoy? What is the life that you're trying to create for yourself? What do you want your everyday life to look like? And I wouldn't shy away from coming back into that. Yes, there's all these leadership roles and teamwork and aspirational, like reaching for the future kind of energies that are really well supported here. But it is on the basis of knowing what you love and who you love and why you do what you do. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have. Like I mentioned, I will cover in individual videos every single eclipse. I always do because they're always important. But there are also 2 other major alignments that I'm for sure going to cover here. We're going to get one in mid-November of this year where we have Mars and Jupiter conjoin the South Node. We will also then the following November also get a conjunction of the North Node with Pluto. So there's going to be a lot of major moving parts here that are going to push us even further when it comes to exercising our sense of willpower in the coming years. So definitely feel free to check back with regard to those. And other than that, I do hope these changes are wonderful for you. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right. So for Taurus, we have the North Node in Aquarius is going to be transiting through your 10th house, and the South Node in Leo is going to be transiting through your fourth house. So what we can see is that through 2028, a lot of the major shifts that are coming up in your life are going to be along the lines of your public life, your reputation, your legacy. This can look like a traditional career. Otherwise, it's specifically just your visibility, your leadership, your ambition, as well as your home life and your family life. So very much public life, private life is the easiest way to wind up boiling this down. So this is going to be basically be an overview where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years. There's going to be some moments that'll be extra significant. For instance, each of the eclipse seasons, these are the eclipsing points. And so each of the Leo and Aquarius seasons that are coming up through 2028 are going to be louder when it comes to the changes that are coming up. You're likely to see major like seismic action during those seasons in particular. The nodes can work on their own though, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some shifts and changes that are going to help with this process even in between those seasons. Additionally, there's going to be some fascinating alignments in the coming couple of years to these nodes. So for instance, in the middle of November of 2026, this year, we're going to have a triple conjunction of Mars and Jupiter and the South Node all at the same degree of Leo. And then in November of the following year, mid-November of 2027, we're going to see the North Node wind up conjunct Pluto. So these are pretty big, pretty seismic, pretty loud moments that are going to reinforce the level of willpower and impact of these alignments. But this overview is going to give you a preview, basically, of where to expect that impact to play out over the coming couple of years. So with the nodal axis along these lines, definitely encouraging the embrace of greater visibility, of leadership, of ambition. You are encouraged to focus on reaching on the next rung of the ladder, of pushing yourself further, of not shying away from notions of, I should be in a stronger position, I should be a leader here, I should be recognized for my contributions. So what is it that you're able to do to help yourself reach further when it comes to your ambitions, your public life goals? What is the mark that you're wanting to make on the world? This is a period of time where you're really going to have the wind at your back in order to do that. However, this is going to ping the South Node in your fourth house. So the way that that's likely to play out is changes in your public life. So let's say that you do have like a traditional career and you're reaching for promotions, you're reaching for that next step. It's likely that that is going to have a strong impact, but also be contingent upon your family life. So let's say that you are married and you have children. You live where you live, but maybe you work for a company that has many branches and there's a promotion opportunity for you, but it requires you to move. That is one of the most standard issue experiences of having the nodal axis across your 4th and 10th houses, is that you have to move because this is your home life, but also your family life. So your family also then has to adjust to something big that's happening in your career that is likely to then change all of those different areas of life in tandem. So the lines between these aspects of your life are likely to be somewhat blurred. And the decisions that you're making when it comes to your long-term legacy is likely to be impacting all of your family, or where you're living, or where you feel rooted, or even your sense of emotional security. So there can be a little bit of over-identification with or over-reliance upon the South Node and where that's transiting. And in the 4th house, that is a comfort zone. That is where we seek a sense of emotional security. And so sometimes we can hold ourselves back a little bit for fear of failure or for fear of reaching too far. This is saying, try not to do that. Try not to stay stuck by staying in a comfort zone. So try not to shy away from the limelight, basically. Additionally, the nodal axis, and especially during eclipse seasons, they can play out as very unusual. And part of the reason for this, in my view, is that it tends to course correct us in a pretty strong way and somewhat outside of our own control. And so we can wind up with a really seismic reorientation that winds up coming up. And sometimes that has to come through in these really unusual, unconventional kinds of ways. And so if you wind up with a very unusual opportunity to step up or to step into a leadership role or something like this, I wouldn't shy away from that either, just because it looks kind of strange. Let's say, for instance, that you don't have a traditional career path right now. Let's say you're retired. This could look like, okay, there's an opening for a community leadership role that you never really considered before, but it seems to be on your mind quite a bit after you stumble across it. Maybe someone gives you some encouragement, like, hey, you could just go for that. You could just do that, and that might be fun and fulfilling for you. So I would stay open to those strange opportunities that seem to present themselves. Maybe this is even like a side project at work where it may not be immediately obvious that doing this really well is going to capture the attention, maybe even of like regional leadership or something like this. But that is precisely the interesting ways that the nodal axis tends to play out that I would not be surprised about whatsoever. And the thing with the nodal axis is that what it winds up representing is really huge change. So something that looks small, that looks unusual, that looks out of the ordinary can actually wind up having across the board a massive impact on your life and your trajectory. So try not to overlook those little opportunities that present themselves as well, the weird ones, the ones that seem out of character for you, the ones that you never thought about before. Try and stay open to those, but do keep in mind that those changes that you're making to your public life, they will wind up flowing into your private life or your home life. So having those conversations with family, if that's something you need to do, I think is always wise. Keeping them in the loop, letting them have some word as to how things are going to play out or what kind of timeline you're working with. That said, also, this can look like a major move that needs to come up, or if you are married, your partner getting some kind of a job opportunity that you guys decide that you want to move for, or maybe there's a major leadership role or a job opportunity for a partner, and you're deciding, okay, I'm going to pull back a little bit from my career so I can focus on taking care of the family to avail my partner to this kind of a role. It can also wind up flowing that way as well. So from your 4th house to your 10th house, where your career trajectory shifts a little bit due to family situations or home situations shifting and changing. And on a fully abstract level, for instance, if you feel somehow not super grounded or not super rooted where you are, and that starts to irritate you a bit, you may find, I want to go and look for a place where I can have this impact, make this mark on the world that I'm wanting to make. And that could wind up also pulling you onto a trajectory that enables you to do that. But maybe there's a move involved there. Maybe there's a renegotiation of family roles. Maybe there's needing to look back over your family roles and how that has maybe prevented you from really reaching for the opportunities that you've wanted or connecting with the kinds of people that you've wanted, etc. But yeah, so this is overall where you're likely to be experiencing the most change, the most impact in your life in the coming couple of years. Expect major reorientations here. It's not coming up as a coincidence. The good thing about the nodal axis is, as I preach, it's often hard to resist the change that it's bringing in. So it will force the issue if we're a little bit shy about it, but embracing it is usually the best way to go. And also, as I mentioned, the eclipse seasons are going to be especially important. So mostly around like February, August, or Aquarius season and Leo season, you're likely to see the biggest, loudest shifts and changes. Also, those conjunctions, those alignments that I mentioned, I'll do individual videos on all of those because those will be most significant in this. But hopefully this clarifies what to expect over the coming couple of years. So I do hope that this treats you super well. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Gemini, we have the North Node in Aquarius is going to be transiting through your 9th house, while the South Node in Leo is going to be transiting through your third house in the coming couple of years through about 2028. So this is going to be an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years. And this is going to have so much to do with your mind and your sense of life experience. So expanding yourself, expanding your perspective, that can wind up changing your opinions, changing your viewpoints, how you express yourself. Travel could wind up shaking up your sense of community, etc. So this is really about personal growth and reaching for more. There will be some extra significant moments in the unfolding of this through about 2028, especially the eclipse seasons, which are going to take place in Aquarius season or approximately February of each year, and then in Leo season or approximately August of each year. There's also going to be some interesting conjunctions to the nodal axis over the course of the coming couple of years that will also really increase the volume on these changes. So there's going to be a triple conjunction of Mars and Jupiter and the South Node in Leo in November of 2026 this year. And then next November, there's going to be a conjunction of the North Node with Pluto in November of 2027 of next year. But this should give you a preview of where to expect those impacts unfolding over the coming couple of years. So with the North Node in the ninth house, this is the place of the expansion of your horizons, of your worldview, your perspective on things, your sense of your place in the world and what's possible for you, of what you understand and know, your wisdom, your knowledge. This is also kind of where we meet the world. So publishing can show up here, unfamiliar territory. You're really encouraged in that direction. Now, often this shows up very literally in travel and in higher education when we're talking about the ninth house. So likely you will be developing your sense of your worldview, your sense of your understanding of the world, either through direct experience through travel or through indirect experience through study. Now, this can also be across different lines. This could be spiritual study. This could be philosophical. This could be even along the lines of professional training, but it's opening up your horizons. It's giving you more room to grow, but it does require stepping into unfamiliar territory or stepping outside of a comfort zone. So with the North Node up in that house, you were very much encouraged to do that, to stay flexible, to stay optimistic, and to stay excited about all of that as well, enthusiastic about personal growth. A lot of this probably will have to do with your beliefs, your attitude toward different perspectives, taking some of that on board. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to let go of your old worldview or your old philosophies or ideologies or spirituality or religion or anything like that. But when we're expanding our worldview, often we can wind up finding those little nuggets in other people's perspectives or other cultures' perspectives that can wind up helping us to understand ourselves, that can help us to align with a more authentic sense of what we believe in, what guides us. So if you find yourself drawn to interesting books and people that maybe you don't fully agree with or you don't fully understand yet, I would lean really heavily into that because it's likely that there's going to be huge growth opportunities when you do so. This may push you to travel in ways that you may not have thought you would be comfortable with. So there may be these sudden opportunities that wind up arising. This is also a pretty public place, so it's way up high in the chart. Publishing tends to show up here. Now, book publishing, sure. But this can also be public speaking. This can be putting videos or podcasts out there, sharing your ideas with a broader audience or disseminating your knowledge and wisdom. This could even look like taking on teaching opportunities, understanding the influence, the impact that you're able to have on the worldview of other people as well, or on their trajectory, really embracing that, even though it may be a little scary. So I would try to avoid, to whatever extent that you can, any sort of imposter syndrome or holding yourself in those comfort zones or saying, I'm not ready. Gemini can certainly learn as it goes. And so I wouldn't be too shy about sharing knowledge and sharing experience. Finally, a lot of this is going to have to do with curiosity. So learning from the random conversations that you have with strangers or with friends or acquaintances, learning from the changes that are occurring within your community. Learning from media figures, maybe not just traditional ones, but maybe even through like music, people in the arts, spiritual leaders, hearing them out, testing their ideas, seeing what works for you and what doesn't, and being willing to make those value judgments as well. not just looking at, oh, this person is an expert, so I have to agree with them. But if someone is an expert, maybe it's worth hearing them out and then testing their ideas in your own life and seeing what works. So following that curiosity into unfamiliar territory. Also then really trusting the growth that you're experiencing beyond your comfort zone, knowing that there's always going to be another step there, that you're not just going to kind of be left bereft. Another thing I would say with this, with the South Node in your third house, it may be something of a comfort zone for you to just learn, and take things on. Hear people out, have the localized conversations, but not push yourself too far. Again, that is a mental comfort zone. So this is saying you're really gifted with learning things. You have learned a lot. So how are you going to communicate that? How are you going to disseminate that knowledge? What impact do you want for that knowledge to have on the world? That's what's going to require you to take that extra step outside of the comfort zone to be seen, to be heard. And by doing that, you're likely to experience just a massive amount of personal growth and development, a greater sense of understanding who you are, where you fit into the world, feeling more comfortable with your worldview. Finally, other than that, I would just say sometimes the ninth house has to do with legal situations. So if you need to pursue some kind of a legal action, this could help you quite a bit with that. I would make sure that all your documents are really clear, that your plan is quite clear. And if I didn't harp on it enough yet, I would also stay very flexible in your opinions if you can. Try not to make too many assumptions. Or let me put it this way, try not to over-rely upon your assumptions. And otherwise, these are really wonderful changes. They indicate that you're going to be coming into a huge amount more life experience in the coming couple of years. This should be quite joyful. It should be quite fulfilling for Gemini in terms of curiosity and learning. But without a doubt, the growth is going to require stepping out of a comfort zone. So yeah, as I mentioned, there's going to be some extra significant moments in all of this, especially the eclipse seasons, as well as the triple conjunction on the South Node and the Pluto conjunction with the North Node. So I'm going to do individual videos about each of those because they're all going to bring their own specific flavor to these developments over the coming couple of years. But in the meantime, I hope that this preview is helpful to showing you where to expect the greatest change. I hope that these changes treat you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Cancer, we have the North Node in Aquarius is going to be transiting through your 8th house, while the South Node in Leo is transiting through your 2nd house. So this will be an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years, which is likely literally to be along the lines of your financial and material life. But there's also going to be emotional and security related elements to this as well. So notions of dependency and trust are going to wind up coming into this, the balance between self-reliance and reliance upon others as well. So this is going to be ongoing for a couple of years. There will be extra significant moments in the unfolding of all of this, especially around the eclipse seasons. These are the eclipse points, and so they get triggered most especially by the eclipse seasons, which will cluster around Leo season or around August of each year into 2028, as well as Aquarius season or approximately February into 2028 as well. There will also be a couple other very significant alignments, for instance, the triple conjunction of Mars, Jupiter, and the South Node that we're going to see in Leo in November of 2026 of this year, as well as the conjunction of the North Node and Pluto in Aquarius in November of 2027, so next year as well. But this should give you a preview of where to expect the strongest impacts. So a little clarification off the bat about the difference between the North Node and the South Node. The North Node tends to be where we are encouraged to reach, where we are encouraged to seek a sense of growth, whereas the South Node can be where we shouldn't ignore, we shouldn't just sweep it aside and say that this is unimportant, but we may find to be something of a comfort zone or something that we over-rely upon. So what's interesting about having the North Node up in your 8th house is this is the place of dependency, of vulnerability, of shared resources, of connecting deeply with other people, of commitments and things like this. And so you may find that there are some big shifts in your commitments with others, in notions of dependency, in your shared resources. So this being loans, debts, taxes, but also the contracts that you have with other people, or if you have your finances interwoven into those of others. So if you are married or you share contracts with other people, likely there's going to be some pretty big shifts when it comes to those. Now, it may be due to issues of trust. It may be due to issues of over self-reliance. You may be hesitant to get into contracts with people or commitments with people. You may feel like there are usually strings attached when it comes to that. This is encouraging you to look at that differently. I wouldn't say just hop into any old contract with someone else, but you may have opportunities that are significantly different now if you've had complicated experiences along these lines previous. So what I would say is stay open to it, consider it, think it through. If there is an opportunity that looks pretty good, but it requires trusting someone else, I would look at it from a couple different angles. You may even have your hand forced a bit. So there may be, for instance, a business that you're wanting to start with someone that you know, but it requires taking on maybe a joint loan or something like this. These are things I would really consider. And I wouldn't necessarily look to past experience or just reject that out of hand. Also, though, on more of an emotional level rather than just the financial, because there's so much that's bound up with these two houses, this can be being extremely self-reliant emotionally and not wanting to open up to other people, not wanting to be vulnerable. So it can look a little bit like avoidance, emotional avoidance. And that, I would say, this is definitely encouraging opening up more around. And it may have something to do with the level of trust that you have in yourself. So do you trust yourself to respond in the moment in any given relationship in a healthy way? So for instance, if you get into something with someone and then it turns out that they're not as straightforward or as good as you would like for them to be and you're wanting to get out of it, do you tend to get entangled? Does that tend to get messy and complicated? Or are you able to say, you know what, I don't like this, this, and this, and so now I'm going to change this relationship? Well, if you're in that space, then it should be okay for you to open up initially. So through self-reliance, being able to approximate trust in others in a pretty healthy way that does always give you that opportunity of knowing, regardless of what happens in this connection, I know I'm good, so I don't need to fret about it or overthink about it too much. So releasing that over-attachment to self-reliance or control or avoidance of connection through knowing that deep down you can trust yourself, deep down you know you're good regardless, and so therefore you can be open, you can be vulnerable with other people. And so there may be something along those lines that's going to be pretty significant in these years. I would certainly expect that. You may find as well that there is a need to heal along those lines when it comes to entanglements and your past experience with that. And maybe that's something that you've been focusing on for quite some time. And what this is indicating is that with the North Node in the 8th, you're ready to trust again. You're ready to connect with people on a deeper level again. Also, if you have some relationships that are reaching commitment levels, this can certainly speak to getting married, making those bigger commitments. This would encourage you to grow through those experiences. So I wouldn't shy away from deepening your connections, even if it's not the kind of a connection that's going to be like your be all and end all. There's a growth opportunity here that's represented in your connection, in your tie, in your bond to someone else. So it's growth for you, but it's through that bond. With the nodal axis here, it's a big change. It's a significant change. But it may not be exactly the way that it looks on the face of it. So sometimes we can get this ripple effect with the nodal axis where something can look kind of quiet. It can look kind of small. It can look like no big deal, but it actually winds up representing a massive amount of growth given time. And so through doing that, you may find that you are able to clear out some emotional experiences from the past. For instance, if there has been any attachment to a difficult experience that you've had, you may find that through trusting again, through opening up again, that you're actually able to really set that behind, really release that. And I have to say with the North Node here, that looks to me like it would be the stage of healing that you would be at this point. I know some people are kind of resistant to getting to that stage of the clearing and the healing and everything, but I'm just going to throw that out there. That's what it looks like to me. Coming back to the material aspect of this, The eighth and the second house, not only is this like financial commitments and entanglements and stuff like that that can come through, but it's also buying and selling, investing. So you may find that you are learning a lot about investing, that you're learning a lot about accounting and taxes and things like that for whatever reason. Maybe you are wanting to get into investing. Learning all that you can about that would be absolutely wonderful. Starting to dabble in that, of course, only as much as you are able to lose. It's always what I just throw out there. You may find that this is a significant moment in your life financially because of being open to making those kinds of investments. And the buying and selling, though, not only of, say, stocks or crypto or investments or whatever it is, but also of things, possessions. So this could be like clearing out a storage unit or a bunch of stuff that you've been holding on to and may have some emotional weight to it. This could be you finally letting that go, finally maybe either selling or donating, getting rid of those things. This could be buying and selling a property as well. And that could be quite substantial. You may wind up bringing in quite a bit of money. Or this could look like investing strongly now in property. So this could be your first chance to buy a home or something along those lines in terms of significant investments. But yeah, like I said, there's going to be extra significant moments in this. You may find that your hand is forced with some of these things during the eclipse seasons, during that triple conjunction on the South Node in Leo, or the conjunction of Pluto with the North Node. I'm going to be doing videos about each of those individually because they all bring their own flavor to how these events and these changes are going to be unfolding. But hopefully this gives you a preview of where to expect the major impact of realignment, reorientation, recalibration in your life when it comes to your emotional and material investments and how that's going to wind up changing over the coming couple of years and how you're going to be experiencing that over the coming couple of years. But yeah, so I hope that these changes treat you well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Leo, we have the North Node moving into Aquarius, and that's going to be transiting through your seventh house, and the South Node in Leo, which is going to be transiting through your first house. So this is going to be an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years, which is going to be along the lines of your relationships, your partnerships with other people, collaborations, and your sense of self, notions of where you end and others begin, as well as how you can connect and grow in your connections with people. There will be extra significant moments in this whole unfolding. The nodal axis will be along these lines into 2028. However, the eclipse seasons are going to be the loudest. These are the eclipse points. So when we get a new moon or a full moon near the nodal axis, that's what creates an eclipse. Those are going to be clustered around Aquarius season or February of each of these years, and Leo season or August approximately of each of the coming years as well. There will also be some interesting alignments this time around to the nodal axis. So for instance, there's going to be a triple conjunction of the South Node with Mars and Jupiter coming up this November in 2026. And then in November of 2027, next year, we're going to get a conjunction of the North Node with Pluto as well. But hopefully this will give you a preview of where to expect the greatest impact of change and shifts, reorientations, recalibrations in the coming couple of years, and where to focus and stay open to these changes. So for you, this is quite straightforward, actually. This axis here, the first and the seventh house. The first house has to do with you, yourself, your priorities, your personal goals, your sense of self, your image, the roles that you play. And the seventh house has to do with your partnerships, your relationships, collaborations. So that's where we're going to see those changes. Also, a little bit of a note for you on the difference between the North and the South Node here. The North Node is where we're really encouraged to reach for a sense of growth and development. It can be outside of a comfort zone, but it behooves us to reach in that direction, essentially. And then the South Node is an area where we shouldn't just sweep it aside. We shouldn't ignore this, but we can have a tendency to become over-reliant on that area because it's a strength of ours that we know we can rely on. So for you, there's a lot of encouragement toward collaboration, toward relationships, toward partnerships. So staying open to connecting with people in the coming couple of years, yes, romantically, without a doubt. If you are already partnered up, that relationship is likely to grow and develop and take on new forms. Maybe there will be shifts in your roles within that relationship, in your priorities. Maybe a partner, again, if you're already married, this could be that they are going through huge changes in their life that are going to be impacting you and your personal goals as well. That's a very standard way that the nodal axis across these lines winds up playing out. So you experiencing personal growth shifts and changes through that which they are experiencing, those changes. If you're not partnered up, this would look like opportunities availing themselves to you either through new relationships, be they romantic relationships or business partnerships or close friends. This is like one-on-one connections. Also clients as well. If you work with clients, this could indicate a major increase along those lines, as well as taking very seriously how those relationships wind up playing out. So this could be really getting into the groove with any sort of client work that you have, business partnerships that you have. And this does indicate that you should be drawing in or attracting partners overall. You should just end of sentence, but also people that are likely to support your growth, that are likely to encourage you, that are likely to create waves in your life. So these could be very new kinds of people that you're connecting with. They may have different priorities than the people you've connected with prior, and that could then wind up having an impact on your priorities as well. What's interesting about this, though, is, of course, we see the South Node is in your first house. This doesn't mean any sort of a diminishment of your own personal goals or anything like that. The South Node in the first house can have a tendency toward over self-reliance. So not wanting to delegate, not wanting to necessarily put the onus on someone else to take care of something. This can even look like feeling that if you have someone else do something, they won't quite do it right. And so you may as well just do it yourself. So releasing an over-reliance upon yourself, becoming more and more comfortable with delegating over these years can have a huge impact as well. Expecting for others to pull their weight. Also, just being able to express your expectations. What is it that you're wanting in your connections, in your relationships with people? The more clear that you can be currently about how you're feeling about that, I think the better. Though I wouldn't be too super rigid about that. I would allow that to flex and grow and develop and shift and change as necessary in the coming couple of years based on the inputs, based on what you're learning. But that is likely to be one of the biggest areas of change in the coming couple of years is where do you end and others begin? And what are your expectations in partnerships? And what are the expectations of others toward you when it comes to partnerships? Where are the lines with all of that? The best way, of course, to go about this, easier said than done, is to prioritize these balanced reciprocal relationships to where the onus isn't on you to make sure that everything is good and copacetic with people, but also expecting them to hold their weight with that. Trying to avoid competitive connections with people, but trying to create a sense of harmony with others, intentionally connecting with people who are capable of compromise, and through that, better learning where you should and shouldn't. So overall, what we have here is an indication of proliferation of connections for you, so growth or increase in your relationships, a reprioritization of that area of your life, a decrease on the emphasis of a need to be super self-reliant, learning to delegate to others, maybe compromising to some extent on quality when it comes to that, or your expectations. I know that staying in our own lane can feel really good because then it's like, I know exactly what I'm dealing with here because it's just me and my stuff. But there may need to be a little bit of a balance there. The people that you draw in are likely to spur on and create a lot of growth for you. Now, this isn't to say that every single connection that's coming in is going to be the greatest thing or a wonderful, harmonious experience, but they will all be growth lessons. And some of them are going to be hugely significant relationships that probably will stick with you at least for a very long time, if not like the rest of your life when it comes to North Node relationships that wind up coming in. Those usually are going to be the most significant relationships that you wind up developing in life. Where I would recommend focusing intentionally is notions of compromise and where are the lines with that and creating a sense of balance, compromise, and harmony within your relationships as they're developing. Also, when opportunities present themselves for you to collaborate with others, this certainly encourages that and indicates that that would be a way to especially grow your connections to other people. So for instance, again, if you do work with clients, maybe there's some kind of a networking or a group event or something like that. A colleague is reaching out to you saying, hey, do you want to work on this with me? You could find an increase in clients through getting into something like that. If you work with an audience, this could be collaborating on something that you're putting out together, etc. You're likely to benefit, not just have opportunities to connect along those lines. But yeah, as I mentioned, there will be extra significant moments around this. A lot of this is likely to cluster around the eclipse seasons in the coming couple of years. So like I said, approximately August and February, you should find that there are louder or more significant jolts, things that you kind of can't avoid dealing with in the moment. The conjunctions, that triple conjunction with Mars and Jupiter to the South Node, the conjunction of Pluto with the North Node, these are going to be very loud moments as well, where we're likely to really feel the seismic change coming through. I will do videos on each individual one of all of those events because they're all going to add their own kind of flavor, their own dynamics to this broader picture that's unfolding over the coming couple of years. But hopefully this will give you a preview of where to expect the impact and where to stay flexible in the coming couple of years so that you're not resisting some inevitable changes and shifts here. But yeah, I do hope that these changes treat you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Virgo, the North Node will be transiting through Aquarius in your 6th house, and the South Node will be transiting through Leo in your 12th house. So this will be something of an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years. And this is going to be along the lines of your everyday mundane life, your responsibilities, your tasks, your working life, as well as your inner world, your imagination, your intuition, your spiritual life, and all notions of service and compassion and well-being. There will be extra significant moments in this, especially around the eclipse seasons. This is when we tend to feel the greatest jolts or changes. So these are the eclipsing points when we get a new or a full moon that's close to the North Node or the South Node. That becomes a solar or a lunar eclipse. And those are going to be taking place in Aquarius season or approximately February, as well as Leo season or approximately August of the coming couple of years. However, the nodal axis will be slowly moving through these houses of yours into 2028. So you'll see some shifting sands and some opportunities for change even outside of those seasons. But that's when you get the big jolts, the big unavoidable changes come through usually during eclipse season. We're also going to get some interesting alignments this time around to the nodal axis because we're going to get a triple conjunction with Mars and Jupiter and the South Node in Leo that's going to be coming up in mid-November of 2026 of this year. And we're also going to get a conjunction of the North Node in Aquarius with Pluto in November of 2027 or November of next year as well. However, hopefully this will give you a preview of where to expect the impact of change, realignment, reorientation, recalibration over the coming couple of years overall. So with the North Node going through your 6th house, this is a place of your daily habits, your routines, your responsibilities, the things that you have to do, your working life, teams that you work with, colleagues, coworkers, etc., employees. So you're likely to see a lot of change along those lines. And there's likely to be a lot of opportunities to make improvements along those lines as well. So when it comes to your daily routines and habits, are you satisfied with that right now? If you're not, then this is probably going to be quite welcome because it's going to make this area of life more flexible to where you are able to make those improvements that you're wanting to make. Do you feel like your habits are conducive to your health and to your well-being? Or do you feel like you encounter issues of burnout too often? Do you have work-related illnesses or injuries that wind up coming up from overworking? Again, this is going to help to change that. So that could be some of the actual tasks that you have to do, changing, your workload changing, new people being brought on, or new roles that you are going to be fulfilling in the coming couple of years as well. This does definitely encourage focusing on those mundane areas of life and the impacts that they have on your well-being. So for instance, if you are into meditation and wellness and like taking all your supplements and things like that, that's great. But what are all of the actual like tangible stuff that you have to do that impacts how good you feel about your day? What are the aspects of life that you love and that you get excited about? And what are those that you feel you kind of dread? Maybe are you able to automate some of that? That may be a thing here with this in Aquarius, certainly. Do you have a tendency toward perfectionism that could be part of the reason why maybe if you go above and beyond other people, that could be part of the reason for burnout because you want to do a really, really, really good job. But maybe you are still able to get some really solid results without being too overly perfectionistic with yourself. So when is good enough good enough? If you're burning yourself out, this would be really encouraging you finding that line and trying to respect that line for you. As I said, this could have you modernizing or upgrading or innovating, automating certain tasks or goals around your work environment, maybe some of the tools that you use as well. So looking at your physical work environment and the impact that that has on you, maybe you even want to make some energetic changes, like feng shui the space or clear the air or something like that. Those things can have a pretty big impact. Maybe you want to beautify the space that you're working in. Maybe you want to try to move away from or work a little bit less with people who are quite fretful or stressful. This could even wind up looking like opportunities to change the work environment, like working from home a little bit more or working for yourself more. So maybe this is something that you're pursuing is a new way of going about your work, which could look like going independent. And maybe you don't broadcast that immediately, but maybe you create it as like a different tier of work that you're doing that's going to create a sense of growth for you. But maybe it's going to take some time. Maybe it is going to take the coming couple of years for that to really take hold. Ultimately, what you should be looking at is how to support your own well-being. And it's the things in your everyday life that get in the way of that, that if you're able to focus your intention on improving those things, you may find that kind of serendipitously, some of these things sort themselves out, or there are opportunities or doors that open, or people that give you advice or whatnot that is able to help with that process and make the change that you're looking for easier. That said, I know I said like, yeah, okay, supplements, stuff like that. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to any sort of nutritional gaps or the shortcuts that you're taking. Are you exercising? Should you be doing that? Is there a better way of doing that? That represents something of an innovation that maybe feels like less of a slog or feels less dreadful. This would certainly encourage that. Something that's actually going to stick with you is certainly better than something you're going to struggle against for a little while and then forget for a couple of years again, right? So what are those health practices that best support your well-being? Some of those are simply going to look like dealing with certain people less if they're stressful. And some of that is going to look like going to the doctor more or not ignoring certain things more. You may even find that this winds up helping you to uncover certain hidden aspects of your health. So for instance, if you have felt like chronic fatigue or something along those lines, often that comes from some kind of an autoimmune thing. These are invisible things that can be really difficult to put your finger on, but maybe this can help with this being an eclipsing point to bring that out into the open, to help you to uncover that with a doctor, get a name for it, get some kind of a treatment plan, see what's going to work, see what's not. Even if it's still a little bit of like shots in the dark, at least if you know somewhat closer to what you're working with, you can really improve your health with that quite a bit. But yeah, as I mentioned, this is going to come to notions of service as well. Now, the South Node in your 12th house, it is de-emphasizing notions of sacrifice or surrender or just letting things be what they are, or just saying, well, it'll improve itself, or taking like a hands-off approach. There's a bit of a de-emphasis of that. So there is an encouragement to like actively take part in the changes that you're wanting to see. But this will also raise those questions of when is service healthy and when is it too much? So for instance, sometimes we can do too much for other people, for groups of people, when we have a major alignment like this in our 6th house. And we can find that not only are you maybe burning yourself out, you might be doing it out of a sense of obligation to other people that isn't really there or isn't really reciprocated. So, usually, what I preach when it comes to the sixth house and where sometimes we can cross a line when it comes to service, and that can go into like a place of being unhealthy. Just straightforwardly look at, is it reciprocated? Even if someone's not able to reciprocate on the same level, are they doing so on another level? Are they looking for ways to ease your burden if you are taking on some of theirs? And that to me is where, is it acceptable? Is it not? Is it worth it? Is it not? Is this healthy, or is it basically just a practice of self-sacrifice for someone else? Those are some of the notions, some of the questions that you might want to overall kind of ask yourself in this period of time. Because one of the things, I know this can sound quite mundane and a little bit boring, but this is such a huge aspect of life, especially when we're looking at our working lives. We spend, a third of most of our days doing that. It's actually incredibly important, and it can wind up impacting how we feel about ourselves, our personal goals, how we talk about ourselves and our lives, our notions of what our prospects are, and what we're reaching for. So it can be pretty spectacular when we're able to get some significant changes along these lines, but it does take getting this area of our life right often in order to open the door for bigger changes down the road, or more exciting changes down the road. So yeah, as I mentioned, there's going to be some significant moments in this, especially around the eclipse seasons, approximately February, approximately August of the coming couple of years. You're likely to feel like there's these bigger jolts, or that the change is more seismic, less avoidable, and louder, more apparent around those periods of time. The triple conjunction with the South Node as well, that's going to be a pretty big deal. That'll be somewhat loud. I'll go into that, as well as the conjunction to Pluto. I'll cover all of these in their own individual videos, all of the individual eclipses and those conjunctions, because that's going to bring different flavors and different dynamics at different times in the coming couple of years that we'll want to focus in on for that period of time in particular. But hopefully this gave you a preview of where to expect some of the impact, where to stay flexible, and where to look for some of the more important or pertinent or recalibration, reorientation kinds of changes that are going to be coming up for you in the coming couple of years here. So yeah, I do hope that these changes are wonderful for you. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Libra, we have the North Node in Aquarius transiting through your fifth house, and we have the South Node in Leo. It's going to be transiting through your 11th house as well. So this is going to have a huge amount to do with your social connections, your sense of belonging, your loved ones, your sense of individuality and authenticity, your self-expression, your aspirations, the projects that you're working on. So these should be some really wonderful changes, but this is going to be an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts and realignments, reorientations, course corrections in the coming couple of years. There will be some extra significant moments in the unfolding of all of this through 2028. For instance, all of the eclipse seasons, because these are the eclipsing points. So the eclipses are also going to run across this axis. That's going to be in the Leo and Aquarius season, so February-ish and August-ish of each year. We're also going to get some very interesting alignments to this. So we'll get a triple conjunction. Mars, Jupiter, and the South Node will all conjoin in the same degree in the middle of November of 2026 this year. And then in the middle of November of 2027, the following year, the North Node will wind up conjoining Pluto as well over in Aquarius. So these are likely to be moments that are going to be extra significant, but this should give you a preview of where to expect a lot of the impact of change in the coming couple of years here, and where you should focus your energies. So with the North Node, this is an area of potential major growth and breakthrough in your fifth house. This is really about embracing your joys, embracing your pleasures, embracing your sense of self-expression, your creativity. Any creative projects that you're working on are likely to get a major boost, a lot of inspiration to work from here as well. You should certainly be pursuing these things. And especially just the notion of what makes life worth living. So what are the wonderful aspects of life that you would do regardless of finances, regardless of responsibilities, etc. If you weren't expected to do it, what would you still do? A lot of that winds up showing up in the fifth house. So those are the kinds of projects and focuses. Maybe it's just events, maybe it's socializing, connecting with people, taking care of people, connecting with children, your own children, especially in the fifth house winds up showing up. All of that is very strong in the fifth house, and this is a major encouragement to lean in that direction in the coming couple of years. Additionally, so the South Node tends to point to where we can naturally lean into, but maybe a little bit too much at times. So it's not something that we just want to completely upend or remove from our life or ignore, but it is something that we can become a little over reliant upon and can resist change through that to some extent. So with that up in the 11th house, this is probably going to look something like the need for group approval or social expectation and over-reliance upon leadership roles and making sure that everyone else is good, and making sure that you're fitting in and that you're doing the things that you're expected to do, etc. So this is encouraging you to focus a little bit less on that. Certainly makes sense for Libra to focus a little bit less on that, a little bit more on just what you purely enjoy, so that you're able to make more space for joy, for pleasure, for love, for the sake of it. Again, this is the major thing with the fifth house is it's what do you do regardless? The 11th house is very aspirational up here. So that's what's going to be kind of natural is for you to look at the vision that you have for your future and what you feel you ought to be doing, and then over focus on that to the exclusion of the joy and the fun that's going to give you the most growth if you lean into it in the coming couple of years. Additionally, you should be able to find that you're actually able to make a greater impact on people and on the groups that you're involved with, the communities that you really care about through your individuality and letting that come through and letting that shine. So this would look to me like you are probably supposed to be inspiring people through your action or through example, through your ability to be unique, to be yourself without necessarily stepping on toes, but also without leaving a whole lot of your spirit or your passion on the table. So shining really naturally and letting that inspire people, collaborating along those lines. You will naturally light people up and lift people up. But what the indication here is that the best way to do that is to lean into authenticity, to creativity, to who you are, to what your priorities are, and to what motivates you personally. So with all of that said, I would also expect some serendipitous, wonderful realignments, reorientations when it comes to your social life and your loved ones. This could indicate new relationships. This could be friendships or romantic relationships in the fifth house as well. This could also indicate having children, and that could be a major shift that's going to be coming up here, or knowing more children, connecting with and inspiring more children. So I wouldn't be surprised if you find a lot of the change that you're experiencing in the coming couple of years feels like it's coming from who you are deciding that you want to spend time with and what kinds of relationships you're focusing on. So that's what I would think about primarily. I would lean into the ones that are, again, for the sake of it. And if you do that, you shouldn't wind up going too wrong when it comes to all of what the eclipses are going to wind up bringing in for you as well, in terms of a lot of change and self-acceptance and an increase in the sense of pleasure of life. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Libra. These are wonderful alignments. As I mentioned, there's going to be eclipse seasons that come up, and those are going to feel like they're much louder about these changes than other periods of time. However, also, we are going to see those major alignments in the 11th house and then in the 5th house as well. I will cover every single one of those in videos of their own because they all have their own particular flavor. But this is overall where you should expect to see a lot of change in the coming couple of years. So I do hope that it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Scorpio, we have the North Node in Aquarius. It's going to be transiting through your 4th house, and the South Node in Leo is going to be transiting through your 10th house. So, where you are likely to see the biggest shifts in the coming couple of years is likely to be around notions of your home, your family life, your private life, as well as your public life, your career, your reputation, your ambitions, and the mark that you are making on the world. There will be extra significant moments in this whole process from now through about 2028 when we get the nodal axis moving on. Those are especially going to cluster around eclipse seasons, which are going to take place in the Aquarius seasons around February of each year, and then the Leo season, which is approximately August of each year. There's also going to be some interesting alignments. For instance, in the middle of this November, we're going to see a triple conjunction of Mars and Jupiter and the South Node in Leo. And then the following November of 2027, we're also going to see a conjunction of the North Node with Pluto in Aquarius. So these are likely to be the loudest moments when it comes to this, but the nodal axis in and of itself transiting through these places are going to be shifting some of the sands to allow room for those more seismic shifts during those periods of time. So hopefully this will give you a preview of where to expect that impact unfolding over the coming couple of years. So with the North Node in particular in your fourth house, as I mentioned, this is home, family, your private life, your sense of emotional security and rootedness and belonging, comfort. So this is encouraging you to build that out, to build that stronger, to build up your own personal foundations for yourself. This may require looking actively at your roots, your family of origin, your sense of security. How is that doing? If it is not the strongest right now, I would say this is quite hopeful. This is likely to help you out a lot with addressing any sort of issues that you're feeling along those lines. This does encourage connecting with people who feel like family. However, this is also the place of your home. So there is an encouragement to look at where you're living, how you're living, and whether, of course, you are satisfied with that. You're likely to see some major opportunities for change along those lines. You may think right now as well, I hate to say this, but it's the nodal axis, it's how it functions. You may think right now, no, it's all fine, it's good, we're comfortable and everything. There still may be a major upgrade or shift that's coming up for you along those lines. And I would really encourage with the North Node there to stay open to those kinds of shifts and changes. Now, you may also see that specifically family members are going through major changes that are impacting you and impacting the trajectory of your life as well. So for instance, this could look like a partner of yours, if you are married, a career shift that they are taking on. And maybe it's going to create a lot of opportunity for your family, but maybe it requires you to step back from your own career for some time or to enable change there. So for instance, if they then need to move for a promotion, this could be you stepping out of one role and going into another in whatever different city or neighborhood or whatever it is that you're needing to move to, just as an example. This could also have to do with if your parents are going through major changes. And maybe they need you to live closer, maybe they need to live closer, and that is then having an impact on your trajectory and your future as well. This is encouraging staying open to those kinds of shifts. It's not that the South Node is going to be diminishing your reputation or your career or your status or anything like that, but it can encourage flexibility along those lines. So especially if this is something that you have focused strongly on for some years and you feel very strongly invested in that public status or a specific image of yourself and what you're leaning toward, you may find that there are moments in this of clarification where you may feel that you don't quite identify with those roles that you've laid out for yourself as much. And that can really help you to be more flexible about embracing changes along these lines. This could even look like going into a different field or a different role within your field. The South Node isn't saying we're not focusing here. It's saying you've got this, you're pretty strong in this area, so we can afford some shifts, some changes in order to avail ourselves to some of the more private life changes that are needing to be made here as well in order to foster a sense of personal growth. As I alluded to, healing ancestral or emotional patterns may also play into this. So looking back over the roles that you've played in your home life and your family, if there are any issues there that you need to address, either on an individual personal level, just within yourself and embracing and healing and releasing when it comes to that, or directly dealing with family members and actively redefining those roles together, addressing any sort of emotional or behavioral patterns, that North Node there is going to offer a lot of opportunity for the kinds of change that you're reaching for when it comes to your family of origin, especially. Additionally, by focusing on your foundations right now, this is opening the door for bigger changes when it comes to your public life down the road as well. So you can support your future by reorienting yourself to make sure that you are on sound footing, that the basis of your life is really solid so that you can grow upon that in many years to come. And part of the reason for that is that when the nodal axis starts to shift and change in one area of your life or the other, often these wind up flowing into each other. So personal life, private life, home life, family life changes wind up having a huge impact on your career, your reputation, your legacy, your trajectory, your ambitions, or vice versa. So the changes, they wind up flowing together. And so what might look like, okay, I'm needing to focus a lot on my family and their considerations. What may actually be happening is that you're getting set up for a career shift that will actually have you reaching further, but in due time and when you're ready and when your family and private life are ready for you to do that as well. Another little thing with the nodal axis that's fascinating is we can wind up with these tiny little ripples that wind up growing and growing. So little things that come up over the coming couple of years, especially during eclipse seasons. I would be paying attention to all of the different areas of life that I've mentioned here during those seasons especially. But those little ripples that you see there, often they do wind up becoming pretty seismic changes down the road. It's just that there needs to be a little bit of flexibility. But yeah, as I mentioned, hopefully this gives you like a preview of where to expect the impact over the coming couple of years. There will be those eclipse seasons, those conjunctions that are going to make this extra loud. And you are likely to see the strongest jolts of change during those periods of time. But I will cover all of them in their own individual videos as they wind up coming up and bringing their own flavor to these shifts. So definitely feel free to stay tuned for that. Other than that, I do hope that these shifts and changes are excellent for you. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Sagittarius, we have the North Node is going to be transiting through your third house as it's going through Aquarius, and the South Node is going to be transiting through your ninth house as it moves through Leo. So this is going to be something of an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years, which is going to be along the lines of your sense of community and belonging, communication, learning, exploration, understanding, wisdom, knowledge, etc. And there will be really significant moments where the volume on this seems to be turned up really high because these nodes are going to be here for a couple of years, but especially during the eclipse seasons that are going to be coming up that are centered around these nodes. Those are going to be happening during Aquarius season, which is approximately February, as well as Leo season, which is approximately August of the coming couple of years into 2028. As well as during a couple of very significant alignments that are going to happen too, which is in November of 2026, in the middle of November, there's going to be a triple conjunction of Mars and Jupiter and the South Node in Leo, as well as the conjunction of the North Node with Pluto in November of 2027, so next year. So you may find that a lot of the bigger shifts and like jolts wind up clustering around those periods of time, but the nodal axis in and of itself can create the kind of flexibility and shifting sands that are necessary to open you up to these really big changes. So hopefully this gives you a preview of where to expect that impact over the coming couple of years. So with the North Node in the third house, this is really encouraging you to develop community connections, to look at where you feel like you belong with those around you, the people, places, things around you, your city. Do you feel comfortable there? Do you feel rooted there? If not, for one thing, maybe this is going to represent something of a change, like a move to a different kind of a community. This could have you detaching from some groups of people and then attaching to others, exploring the different kinds of people that are around. but it could also just have you rooting in a little bit more deeply. So if you haven't been so focused on social life, this can bring your attention back to the significance of that. Now, this is also going to be working on your communication skills, on your voice, and it is encouraging you to speak up about your ideas, about your opinions, about your perspectives on the community around you, and especially like down to earth solutions for things. So, like policy when it comes to your community, or how your friends behave and treat each other, or what their priorities are. You may wind up developing this through writing or through public speaking, or simply through these increased conversations that you're going to be having through your local connections and your sense of belonging developing more over the coming couple of years. So this tends to be quite cerebral and quite communicative, focused on exchange with those around you. But through that, you are rooting yourself more. You may even find yourself more deeply developing your opinions and your worldview. Not necessarily through developing that on a theoretical level, but developing that through your connections with people. So this may require some flexibility when it comes to your beliefs or any sort of attachments you may have to specific perspectives or philosophies, old outdated roles or identities that may have you feeling like you're not able to connect or relate to those around you. So if you have felt that way recently, I would encourage looking at that, try and get a little bit more flexibility around that, try and connect with people more. You may be surprised with how much you are able to relate and how much you enjoy relating with those that are directly already around you or that you're already in conversation with. There could be some interesting new philosophies that you're coming into as well, or new perspectives, just serendipitously through media, through books, through conversations. And you may find that it's very significant for you and for your future and for your perspectives on life, especially on your own life, to engage directly with those things. So this could be about, let's say you just happen upon some author who writes about imposter syndrome and people who are socially anxious and maybe a bit shy or reserved due to that. If you suddenly run across an author or a community around that, it could have a huge impact on your life, on your ability to speak up for yourself, on your ability to communicate openly, communicate your ideas without fear that you're going to be pointed out to be wrong or something like that. And these things can happen just very serendipitously, of like the notion that you may not even know that you're holding of, well, if I'm quiet, then it's going to cause less ripples and I'm going to have less trouble. That could be directly challenged by that as well. So you may have your opinion, your worldview about how you should behave within the world challenged by some authors or books or even philosophers or, teachers or gurus or people that you just kind of serendipitously encounter. So staying open to new perspectives is going to be a big, important part of this personal development that you're experiencing here. You are likely to find yourself with a major hunger for knowledge, really wanting to learn. So you could, like I said, be doing that through books or media or whatnot. You could also be doing that through direct experience. So getting out, exploring, maybe going into some unfamiliar territory, maybe travel, taking road trips, going and like trying to explore and find yourself out there in the world. And it could be wonderful at periods of time over the coming couple of years if you can put yourself in unfamiliar spaces, unfamiliar territory, because that in and of itself, it changes what's around you, right? So we're looking at this change that's happening to the people, places, things around you. Well, we can do that actively if we literally change our location and change the things that are around us. So yes, that can look like moving, as I mentioned, but it can also look like just going to a different kind of a place, going to a different neighborhood, hanging out with a different group of people, going on a road trip, visiting another country. And you could wind up fulfilling a lot of that hunger for understanding, for knowledge, for new perspectives by directly engaging and sharing with different kinds of people as well. So yeah, I would really expect that this is going to be a couple of years where your mind is changing about the world, about your sense of community and belonging, about where you fit in, about the notion even of fitting in and what that means for you. Probably it's going to look a little bit less like conformity and a little bit more like embracing your own authentic contribution to those around you. A lot of this is also going to have to do with communication. So you may find yourself writing quite a bit, journaling, or writing it with the intention of publishing. You're definitely encouraged to exercise your voice and speak up more. And through doing all of this, you may find that your sense of growth is a little bit closer to home. It's a little bit closer to you and your own mind and your own spirit than it is like something that's out there in the world to be connected with. It's likely you're going to find that growth closer to home than you're expecting with the North Node in your third house. So yeah, as I mentioned, there's going to be significant moments in this clustered around the eclipse seasons, clustered around as well the triple conjunction to the South Node that we'll get this November, the conjunction of Pluto with the North Node next November. I'll do individual videos about each of those alignments because all of them are going to bring their own flavor to these different developments. But hopefully this did give you a pretty clear preview of where to expect some of the major impact, reorientation, recalibration over the coming couple of years. I do hope that these changes treat you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Capricorn, we are going to have the North Node moving through Aquarius in your second house and the South Node in Leo moving through your eighth house. So this is going to be an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years. And with these across this axis here, the second eighth house axis, this is likely to have a lot to do with your material and emotional security, commitments to others, investments, your resources, and where that winds up intersecting with other people. There will be extra significant moments in the unfolding of this. So we're going to have these nodes moving through these houses into 2028. However, the eclipse seasons themselves, these are the eclipse markers. So whenever we get a new or a full moon near the nodal axis, that's what makes it a solar or a lunar eclipse. During those eclipse seasons, in Aquarius season or approximately February, Leo season or approximately August, you're likely to find that the change or the wind at your back when it comes to these changes is a lot stronger, that there's much more of a jolt. But the nodal axis itself has a tendency to create the kind of flexibility that we need in order for those changes to come through. We will also then have some really interesting alignments when it comes to this nodal axis. So for instance, in the middle of November of 2026 of this year, we're going to have a triple conjunction of Mars and Jupiter and the South Node in Leo up in your eighth. And then we will have in November of 2027 a conjunction of the North Node and Pluto in your second house. But hopefully this will give you a preview of where to expect those impacts to unfold over the coming couple of years. So this is going to be making some really strong impacts when it comes to your material stability, security, what you feel like you are able to rely upon. It looks to me like you are growing that, like you are shoring up and making stronger that foundation. So major growth when it comes to creating a lasting sense of material security and stability, developing greater resources, either through incomes, which show up in the second house, side hustle incomes, dividends, investments, things along these lines. Maybe this is going independent and creating multiple streams of income. This could be raises that are coming in and deciding how you're going to utilize those new resources. This could also look like greater efficiency. So being able to build up your resources through focusing more nitty-gritty on where are those resources going. But the North Node it has to do with increase, and in your second house, it has to do with your money. So that's very nice. It looks like an increase to your financial standing here. This may have something to do with innovating with Aquarius here. So maybe you are developing lucrative skills that you're going to be able to leverage. Or like I said, maybe you are innovating in the direction of going independent. Or maybe you are innovating as in doing different kinds of investments than you have before. The nodal axis also brings us back to what's truly important to us. And so you may find that there is a fire lit under you to align your source of income with your values to a greater extent. So are you just trying to build money? Or are you trying to build a lifestyle? That's a very different kind of way that this would wind up unfolding. So again, then we come into questions of efficiency. Where's the money going? Are you wanting the numbers to go up, or are you wanting a greater sense of freedom and liberation in your life? And does that mean investing in more travel, finding an opportunity that has a similar income or flow of money, but gives you more time off. Or again, going independent, being able to call the shots a bit more when it comes to how you are earning your income. So a lot of these questions are likely to creep in at times. This is ultimately a reorientation, a recalibration of your life overall through the financial and other kinds of resources that you have available to you and how you're expending them. Another thing here, the South Node can be where we over depend to an extent, and actually the 8th house has to do with dependencies upon others. So what's interesting about this is you may find that you have a tendency to size yourself up based on the values or inputs or ideas of other people. So looking for approval or validation when it comes to your resources and how you're utilizing them. So for instance, this could be not cutting the corners that you feel like you are fine with cutting because you feel like maybe you'll be judged or something like this. Maybe not like keeping up with the Joneses or something like that, but this can totally play out on lower levels like that. The 2nd house is about your values. So this is discouraging looking to others for their values and what they think that you should be spending on. Additionally, the North Node is reinforcing your value, your worth. So a lot of that is intrinsic, and yet I think we can also have a tendency to size ourselves up based on what value do we bring to other people or what value is recognized outside of ourselves. So on a more emotional, psychological level, that's likely how this is going to be impacting you. This is likely to be some of the changes or shifts that you're finding, is that there are opportunities that are going to avail themselves to you to reinforce your understanding of your intrinsic worth, your intrinsic value, what you like about yourself, what you feel that you bring to the table, your contribution, rather than taking a vantage point of that of on the outside looking in. Additionally, this could speak to if you want to be more financially independent, maybe that doesn't have to do with your job. Maybe that has to do with people that you have financial entanglements with. So for instance, if you sign some sort of a contract with someone, or if you find yourself financially dependent on someone, you may find that this is lighting a fire under you to become more independent, even if it means pushing yourself out of a comfort zone of knowing that you can rely on someone else to step in. If that comes with strings attached, that may become less tolerable to you in the coming couple of years. And that being a little bit less tolerable could create the kinds of ripples that you're needing to make a bigger change and increase your own individual resources so that you don't need to depend on other people. That's only if this is uncomfortable for you. That South Node can also speak to notions of generosity. So wanting to build up your resources so that you're able to share of them to other people as well. And that also wouldn't hurt, as long as you're doing so based on your own sense of values and not trying to win people over by being generous to them. But yeah, overall, it's speaking to changes when it comes to your finances, your resources, the agreements that you have along those lines, your investments. So this can look like buying and selling. And that could be big purchases. It could be clearing things out, like selling a bunch of stuff. This can be stocks, 401ks. This could be property that you're buying or selling. This could be a contract for a car, like a car loan or something like that. Big purchases that include contracts. One thing that's interesting, though, again, with that South Node in the 8th house, you may be under a contract like that. You may be annoyed with it and be like, I can't wait to pay this off. I'm not going to buy a new car for a little while. I'm just going to be with the one that I own and not have that car payment hanging over me for a little while. And that could be one of the ways that you're becoming more efficient when it comes to your resources as well. There is an underlying desire for freedom here. So yeah, as I mentioned, there's likely to be louder moments of this where your hand is kind of forced or where you really feel that fire lit under you to like pay off debts and free yourself from that. Those will cluster around the eclipse season, certainly. Again, February, August of each year going into 2028. The triple conjunction on the South Node that's coming up in this November, the conjunction to Pluto that the North Node is going to do next November. I will cover all of those in their own videos, every eclipse and those interesting conjunctions, because they're all going to bring their own flavors and their own backwinds to how these changes are unfolding for us. But again, hopefully this gives you a preview of where to expect a lot of the impact and hopefully can explain some of the shifting sands that you may feel coming up in this area of your life. I hope that these changes are absolutely wonderful for you, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Aquarius, we have the North Node in Aquarius is going to be transiting through your first house, and the South Node in Leo is going to be transiting through your seventh house. So, this should give you an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years. And that's going to be along the lines of you and your own personal goals, the roles that you play, your self image, your sense of self. So, you in this life of yours, as well as your partnerships, collaborations, relationships out in the seventh house. So, where you end and others begin is going to be a big part of this broader story of the coming couple of years. So, these will be going through these areas into 2028. However, there will be extra significant moments in this unfolding, especially clustered around the eclipse seasons that are going to be coming up over the coming couple of years. So, Aquarius season, or approximately February of each of these years, and Leo season, or approximately August of the coming couple of years. We're likely to feel stronger jolts that feel like we're less able to resist the change. However, the nodal axis going through these areas, they're likely to be softening this up, giving some indications of the shifts that are coming up, trying to present opportunities for you to take hold of so that you're ready for those eclipse seasons when they come in as well. Additionally, this time around, we're going to get some really interesting alignments to the nodal axis. We will also have the South Node have a triple conjunction with both Mars and Jupiter at the same time. That's going to be in mid-November of 2026, so this year. And we will also have a conjunction of the North Node with Pluto in Aquarius that's going to come up in mid-November of 2027, so also next year. However, hopefully this will give you a preview of where to expect and prepare for some of the impact of the changes and shifts that are coming up. So off the top here, North Node in your first house. This is all about you, your reinvention, new goals, the reprioritization of your own personal goals and the roles that you play. So you are likely to find that there's this sense of the universe conspiring to enable you to change yourself in the coming couple of years. So reinventing your identity, understanding that you should be and you are invited and encouraged by the nodal axis here to prioritize yourself, to lean into your own confidence, to lean into your own authenticity and power and impact that you have, as well as bringing you back to the sense of meaning that your life has to you. So it's a pretty big deal when the North Node is moving through your first house. It will be doing so into 2028. It's probably cool to check in approximately now as to like, who do I feel like I am? What are my goals right now? What am I focused on? What have I been focused on recently? It may even be interesting to kind of write that down now and then come back to that in a couple of years, because it's likely that this will completely shift and that there's going to be these interesting serendipitous major opportunities that almost feel inevitable or unavoidable that are going to present themselves over the coming couple of years for you here. And like I said, with Aquarius here, this is really about authenticity. It's about your personal contribution. So what are your personal goals? Try not to feel the need to backburner those or sweep them aside for the sake of others in the coming couple of years. That's part of what the South Node in the seventh house is going to say. It's not saying don't collaborate. It's not saying your relationships don't matter. Not at all. What it's saying is that you're already pretty good at that. You're very aware of the impact that you have on other people. You probably have a tendency to take on the burdens of others, to take on what their goals are in addition to yours. And maybe that doesn't feel like backburnering, but it is certainly a reprioritization. It does require you then to take some energy away from what you are wanting to focus on. So how do you overgive? How do you put yourself out there for others? Maybe a little too much. This would certainly be encouraging you to decrease your emphasis on that. So releasing those outdated relationship dynamics or people pleasing, the assumption that what other people want from you or how they size you up or your sense of your value to other people, like releasing that, deprioritizing that. That's not supposed to be the overwhelming focus in this coming year. But rather, when it comes to collaborations and contribution to causes or to group dynamics or to team work or things like that that you're working on. Also, your close relationships, as in your romantic relationships, your client relationships, your close friends relationships, or business partnerships. Rather than trying to fit yourself into what you feel that should look like, focusing on your ability to have an impact when it comes to all of that through embracing your own unique contribution, your own unique qualities, and valuing that. I hope that makes sense. So not coming at those connections from a place of what are you needing from me, but rather from a place of what am I able to contribute authentically to this. I think also likely a willingness to state your expectations, to ask what other people's expectations are, to be really clear along those lines. It's also going to be really helpful to all of these developments. I know I mentioned that I would be going into some of the other particulars that are going on here in the coming couple of years in different videos, but I do just have to mention in this coming year as well, like into 2027, you're going to have Jupiter out in your 7th house, and you for a long time will have Pluto in your 1st house as well. And this is also very interesting with this because this looks to me like you are definitely being empowered by Pluto being in your 1st house. The North Node is going to come through and it's going to reemphasize that. It's going to be telling you, look, you have the ability to have a huge impact. So try to embrace that. Try to let go of any sort of imposter syndrome or playing small or anything like that. Jupiter coming through your 7th is likely to have a proliferation, basically, of relationship opportunities for you, people to connect with. And if you are spinning a bunch of plates of other people's priorities, that will diminish the amount of energy that you're able to focus on your own personal reinvention. So that is something that I would also throw out there, is that there's going to be plenty out here in that 7th house area. So try not to overburden yourself with any one connection along those lines, but rather than embracing your personal impact, your own personal agency, understanding how that winds up defining the circumstances that you're working with when it comes to other people, your partnerships, your collaborations, and your relationships. So to boil this down, you are being reinvented through this time in accordance with your own personal goals, image, and roles that you are wanting to play. That should be your number one priority. And then you will draw in the people that are going to help to encourage that growth. So try not to necessarily just overemphasize what everyone else is needing from you or what they're saying that they're needing from you or the value that they place on different aspects of you and different goals of yours. Try not to look outside of yourself for approval of the reinvention process that you're going through, basically. Embrace your own contribution to other people. Understand the impact that you do have on other people, but try not to let that be the primary force that you're working with, is trying to serve that outside expectation or that outside priority. Let that take shape based on what you're doing. As I mentioned, there's going to be some hugely significant moments in this, especially around the eclipse seasons that are coming up. So each February, each August approximately. That triple conjunction on the South Node in your 7th house is also probably going to be a pretty big deal. There may be a little bit of drama in that. The conjunction of that North Node with Pluto is going to be massively powerful for you. I will do individual videos on every one of those eclipses and those alignments as well, because they're all going to bring their own flavor, their own dynamic to this unfolding story around who you are and how you connect with other people. So feel free to stay tuned for that. But hopefully this has given you a preview of where to expect this impact and where to stay really flexible in the coming couple of years. So yeah, with that said, I hope that these changes are wonderful for you. I hope that you feel very well served by these changes as well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Pisces, we have the North Node in Aquarius is going to be transiting through your 12th house, and the South Node in Leo is going to be transiting through your 6th house. So this will give you an overview of where you're likely to see major shifts in the coming couple of years, which is going to be along the lines of your spiritual life, your mundane life, your sense of well-being, your sense of service, responsibilities versus rest, etc. There will be extra significant moments in this, especially clustered around eclipse season, so approximately February of each year into 2028. which is how long these transits are going to last, as well as during each Leo season or approximately each August. So February and August is when we're likely to feel the greatest jolt of change or inevitable, unavoidable seismic shifts and changes. But the nodal axis going through these places, it's softening these areas up. It is shifting some of these sands around so that those bigger changes are able to come through in those seasons. We'll also have some pretty significant alignments to the nodal axis as it's going through these houses. So for instance, in mid-November of 2026, so this year, we will get a triple conjunction of the South Node with Mars and Jupiter in Leo. And we will also then have a conjunction of the North Node with Pluto in mid-November of 2027, so next year as well. So there's going to be a lot of impact to the nodal axis as it moves through these areas, but hopefully this will give you a preview of where to expect some of that impact. So as I mentioned, your spiritual life, your inner world, that's going to be really important with this. The North Node tends to point to where our greatest growth opportunities are. And for you, that's deeply internal through this period of time. So over the coming couple of years, you're likely to be developing your spiritual life, your spiritual practices, your inner world, your imagination. You're really encouraged with the North Node in the 12th house to go within and spend some time there, to spend some time detached or unplugged, I should say, from the mundane world so that you are able to clarify and maybe clear out even some emotional baggage or some psychological patterns or patterns of behavior. Unconscious habits, basically, is how I have that written here. Unconscious habits that could have you feeling stuck. Any sort of conditioning, like from early childhood, the roles that you played there, how that can get pretty ingrained. Spending some time kind of digging into this, uprooting some of that, making this area a bit more flexible is really encouraged with the North Node there. And you can have some huge impact, like ripples basically across different areas of your life through focusing on getting that area as clear as you can. So trusting in rest, relaxation, intuition, spending time in your head, in your heart, in your spirit. You have a lot of permission to take some time out and just chill in that space and allow for the insights to come to you from those usually outside of our awareness realms of ourselves. So what's hidden, what's under the surface with you? This gives you a lot of permission to tune in, tap in, and listen to that, and then make the adjustments that are necessary. And like I said, you're likely to have some louder opportunities, like some big insights, or maybe it's running across a piece of media that's speaking directly to a perspective that you carry that you may be unaware of, or an emotional pattern that you have either developed or just haven't quite been fully aware of, even to some notion of your relationship with the universe itself or with spirit itself or with God. Those agreements that you feel like you have there could be shifting and changing, and that could come through in weirdly clear ways to you. So you may find that there's these weird synchronistic, like serendipitous things that come through. Maybe it's going to be the angel numbers and, oh, just as I'm seeing 1111, I'm meeting someone significant, or something along those lines where it's like, to you, it's fully evidenced. You have everything that you need to prove to you some sort of a spiritual connection. Maybe you can't explain it to other people, but to you, it may become extremely clear. And it may manifest in these very tangible ways so that it's not just a feeling. But that could wind up changing your relationship with spirit, with your angels or God or whatever it is. So do you feel deeply supported in those connections? If so, that's wonderful. This is likely to be increasing the emphasis on that. So you're likely to go even more in that direction, or grow more in that direction, I should say. But if you have felt hot and cold about that, or you haven't been completely sure as to what that connection is, it's likely to present itself to you a huge amount, especially if you ask for it, especially if you write down the things that you want, or you ask for signs. You may be surprised with how quickly those wind up manifesting themselves in physical form for you with that South Node in the 6th house there. Now, another reason that you're really encouraged to lean into rest, reflection, intuition is that with the South Node in the 6th house, you are discouraged from over committing yourself when it comes to tasks and responsibilities and obligation. So any sort of unhealthy work patterns or focusing so much on I have to do and do and do, and I can't just take time to be. That's really discouraged during this period of time. So that kind of constant busyness or feeling like you're doing something wrong if you're resting, leaning into burnout, leaning into perfectionism. This is all really discouraged over the coming couple of years. So maybe this looks more like manifesting what you're wanting or doing the whole like writing down what you're wanting and preparing yourself to let the universe meet you halfway when it comes to that, so that it doesn't feel like you're pushing up against walls all the time and that you're able to get more of a benefit out of less exertion. Finally, this is a place of quietude as well, of kind of doing things behind the scenes. It also tends to be a place of a lot of preparation. And so you may find that you're just kind of working behind the scenes on certain things that you plan to release later. So for instance, when that North Node maybe goes into your 11th house, you may be much more social. You may be connecting with large groups of people. You may be in leadership roles. But if you feel like there are things that are holding you back, maybe there's a little shyness or again, any sort of patterns like that, this can help you to work on that behind the scenes. Or even a project. Maybe this is like a creative project that you're working on. That's another 12th house thing, is like creativity and imagination. You could be developing something behind the scenes for a couple of years here that you wind up releasing then and having a huge amount of influence from in a couple of years. So yeah, overall, to clarify, working on stuff behind the scenes, developing your sense of spiritual connection and support system, developing the trust there behind the scenes, releasing notions of having to have everything perfect or having to overserve others, or finding your sense of personal value in what you're able to do for other people. This isn't about doing, it's about being. It's about well-being, especially. So making that time for rest, for reflection, for intuition, for working on things that deeply matter for you. This is what you're really encouraged to lean into. And you're likely to see some pretty seismic changes in your life through these areas of your life. So expect a lot of guidance over the coming couple of years. As I mentioned, there's going to be extra significant moments that wind up coming up here, especially around the eclipse seasons. I would particularly be paying attention to your health and any symptoms that come up around Leo season, about August, and Aquarius season around February of each year. Those are going to be pointing to deeper things. So not like necessarily deeper physical problems, but for instance, if you get a flu or something, this could literally point to you're taking on maybe toxic energy from other people. There could be these signs that wind up impacting you in these physical, tangible ways that are actually a deeper purpose or meaning basically to those messages that you're receiving through your body. So I'd be paying attention to those. You'll also get a triple conjunction of the South Node and Mars and Jupiter in Leo this November. And then next November, there's going to be that conjunction of Pluto with the North Node as well. I will cover all of these in their own individual videos. So I'll cover each of the eclipses as well as those different conjunctions, because they're all going to add their own flavor, their own dynamic to what's unfolding here over the coming couple of years. But hopefully this gave you a preview of where to expect a lot of the impact of change, recalibration, reorientation over the coming couple of years, maybe where to focus on staying flexible and what to prioritize in order to make the best of the opportunities that are going to be coming up for you in the coming couple of years. But yeah, I hope that these changes are really wonderful for you. And thank you so much for spending this time with me.